Welcome to the Manifestation and Money podcast, where we bridge the worlds of the taboo topic of money with the woo-woo world of manifestation. We're your hosts, Chris and Jenny Schultz.
We're not just about dollars and cents around here. We're all about lifestyle design. You can be working towards financial independence while still living a life you love today.
Get ready for insightful conversations with guests who have embraced the FIRE movement by achieving financial independence and retiring early, as well as entrepreneurs and individuals who defied the norm and have paved their own way to a life they love.
Together, we'll explore the powerful connection between mindset, financial freedom, and living a purposeful life. And of course, we'll be sharing our own journey to how we carved our path to a seven-figure net worth before hitting the big 4-0. Are you ready to ignite your financial future? Then let's dive right in.
Welcome to the Manifestation and Money podcast, where your journey to financial independence and the life you love begins now.
Today, we're focusing our attention on DINKS. You likely have several of them in your life, right? DINK is that acronym that is commonly used for households that are dual income, no kids. And to have kids or not to have kids is a reoccurring conversation that I'm seeing pop up in the FIRE movement communities. And that, yes, is a very personal choice. And the financial advice for a household with kids versus a family that is child-free varies drastically. This episode with Jay Zigmont was quite eye-opening for me, just realizing how we might just be unintentionally discriminating against the DINKS in our lives. And if you are a child-free family, then I think you'll feel right at home here listening to Jay, knowing that he's got you and he's going to empower you to set up your financial future to meet your needs, not just some cookie cutter plan that was designed for the masses. Welcome to the Manifestation and Money podcast, Jay.
Thanks for having me.
I would love it for you to give the listeners a little bit of a feel of who you are and what your story is.
Yeah, I'm a little different. So my wife and I are child-free, which just for definition doesn't mean like the kids are gone for the weekend or empty nest. It means we never have kids. So the child-free people are people who don't have kids, aren't planning on kids. And I'm a certified financial planner. And when I was studying to become one, I found everything with finance assumes you have kids. But just like the base assumption, yet about 25% of the US are child-free or permanently childless. Mm-hmm. So that really means 25% of the US or 25% of the world, probably something close, are getting bad financial advice. And that's what I try to fill in that blank.
I am fascinated by this because a huge base of our listeners are FIRE movement followers. They want the financial independence and retire early. And I am noticing a common trend of a lot of them choosing to be childless. And I find that fascinating. And of course, there's always hold the space for the people that are childless, not by choice. There is a big pool of people that are living this childless lifestyle. I would absolutely love you to share kind of the ins and outs of what does that look like in terms of planning for retirement?
Yeah, the way we say it is living a life of child-free wealth means you have time, money, and freedom to do what you enjoy. It doesn't automatically make you rich. Like there's not like a check that flies in from the sky and says, hey, here's a whole bunch of money. But it changes a lot of base assumptions. So you talk about FIRE, we talk about it as FILE, financial independence, live early. Mm-hmm. And if FIRE is an on-off switch for work, many of the child-free people are kind of like doing a dimmer switch for work, cutting back, finding something they enjoy. They're not really, retirement's not really the goal. If you want to go in the FIRE community, that's kind of closer to coast FI or slow FI. But what happens when you take retirement out of the picture? And there's kind of like two big things that come together. If you don't want to retire, and if you're child-free and you don't have a goal to pass on money to the next generation, that changes your entire financial plan. So you look at things like the FIRE number. All right, the safe withdrawal rate is based on the assumption that you want to die with some money. If you want to die with zero, not so much. So they can actually make different lifetime choices. And the way we do it is we try to get people to plan for their life first, then their finances, then their taxes. So rather than focusing on those numbers, you're focusing on what life do I want to live first, and then figure out how to fit the finances with it.
Fascinating. I have never heard the terminology FILE, like the financial independence, live early. And that just strikes a chord with me because yes, it's not the retirement isn't the goal. You retire and then start living your life. You want to encompass that into your lifestyle now and be setting yourself up for that for the future. So I am floored by that term because I feel like I resonate with that so much more than the FIRE term. So FILE. So that is a new word in my vocabulary. Thanks to you, Jay.
Well, it comes out of the research from child-free folks, but then other people are like, oh, I want to do that too. Mm-hmm. And one of the challenges with the FIRE community is the people that actually have FIRE, it's kind of like the dog who caught the car. You retire and then you're like, now what do I do with the rest of my life? And child-free folks, we have what we call the child-free midlife crisis. You get your personal, professional, financial goals, and they're like, now what? If you're a parent, often it goes, well, I'm going to make sure Johnny goes to college or make sure they're set up or whatever it is. We don't have that. So we have to look at it and go, what's the point? So we're in our 30s and 40s going, what's the point for life? What do I want to be when I grow up? What's that next chapter look like? And retiring and sitting on a golf course, just not kind of what people are looking for in most cases.
Yeah, I believe that. And what do you find the common thread for people that have that freedom? Because to me, that feels like a freedom choice of what do they plan to do? Is it more travel?
So the first thing they do is freak out. I'm just going to call it out. So one of the problems is I often will do people's numbers and we'll look at them and be like, all right, you're good. So I had somebody I'm interviewing for my podcast. I share client sessions on there. And I was interviewing him and his wife. And they're like, hey, well, our fire number's X, and we think in 5 to 7 years we can hit it. And then I worked through the numbers. I'm like, well, you're not trying to retire and you're not trying to pass money to the generation. You've already hit your goal. And they were like, but, and like just their brain explodes. And it's almost that analysis paralysis thing about like, well, what happens if I hit my goal a whole lot earlier? And what do I do? And I'll often ask that question. What do you want to be to grow up? It has nothing to do with age. Kind of like, what do you want your legacy to be at? What's your impact? And there's no answer. There's no like, here's what you do next. Because we call it the standard life script. The standard life script says you go to school, get married, you have kids, you work 25 years, you pass on to the next generation. But when you've left that life script, you can do whatever you want. I have somebody I just talked to the other day who's going to open a cupcake shop. When cupcake shops really don't make a lot of money, but enjoyable, and do some gaming stuff with it. I got people traveling. I got people doing charitable, all different types of things where they're doing something they enjoy. I have a lot of folks that want to go back to school and become a librarian. I don't know why, just because it's a cool job. Like you work in the library, you don't make much money, but you enjoy it. And that's the difference. If you can find something you enjoy, retirement's not the goal anymore. It's like, hey, I'll cut back on work. I'll work 4 days instead of 5, or I'll take an extra month off, but I'll just enjoy my life, which is a rare thing in this current age.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, right? Unfortunately, our generation, well, I say our generation, I feel like was taught to hustle. And now I'm watching the next generation come up, which is almost taught the opposite, just to hang back and relax. But to really strip it back, what do I want as your basis of going into anything, especially planning for your future, is key.
Yeah. And child-free folks, so we get two populations. We have people by choice and not by choice. Either way, they're following a different life script than everybody else. Mm-hmm. And you've left it, and like there's all these voices in our head telling us what to do. So my parents, always said, whatever you do, be the best at it. That sounds encouraging, but at the same time, it's really kind of one that messes with your head. Because like, can't I just enjoy life? And I'll often ask my clients, whose voice is in your head saying you got to do that? Mm-hmm. And by the way, we have a lot of them. It could be culture, it could be family, it could be religion, it could be all different things. But you've left the standard life script. All right, let's figure out what you really want. And our society is just not made for that. It actually gets into some really interesting stuff around money guilt. When we think about money and our money mindsets, and can I be happy when other people are suffering? Like there's a lot of stuff to unpack there. But what you find out is the numbers really don't matter. It's everything else that does. And that's hard for people to figure out.
Yeah, I can imagine. Just to pause and think on that. That's kind of cool. Like to shift to that perspective, that is a really cool perspective to come from. When you're sitting down with these clients, you're going through them, you're opening up their eyes to the possibility of the world's your oyster in a sense, right? You're still working hard towards something once you help them figure out what they're working towards. What is different in terms of planning? For me, I have kids, and you said I'm planning, okay, I'm setting up the RESP for their schooling, and hopefully I'm leaving a good enough nest egg so they can each go out and buy their own properties. So what shifts in that for somebody who is childless? Yeah,
so think about it this way. If your goal is not to pass on money to the next generation, there's a point where you actually can have too much money. And that really messes with people's heads. Like your extra money in your mind is going to your kids. Awesome place for it. But let's be real. They could use that money earlier in their life more than they probably could use it when you die. Mm-hmm. So the way I say it, is my nephews get what's left over. If they get 10 grand or 100 grand, that's fine. If they get $1 million, I made a mistake because I should have given that throughout their life, or I should have given it to others, or spent it myself, or whatever. But I should have put a different purpose to my money. And we can actually get to a point in child-free people's lives where I'm like, look, yes, you can invest in the market. Yes, that'll get you X return. But can I get a bigger return investing in you? So when we get child-free couples, we have an approach we call the garden and the rose, where one's providing support and the other one's growing. My wife and I embraced that. When she got a job offer 1,200 miles away, we packed up the car and went. Not a big deal. Well, 5-7 years down the road, it's going to be my turn. I'm going to get on a boat and travel the world. It doesn't have to always be like the top career. You can be the best gardener in the world. It doesn't matter. Or you can just enjoy your life. But from a planning standpoint, you start changing everything. So like life insurance for child-free folks, almost no need, because it's really to cover the income when you're gone. But if you're a dual income, no kid couple, DINKS, chances are your spouse is okay. If you're single, and about 32% of childless folks will never marry, there's no need for life insurance. Come on. What are you leaving that for? Disability insurance is a bigger issue. What happens if you get disabled? What's your long-term care plan? What's your estate plan? Who's going to make decisions when you're older? All of these things start changing on the financial side. I think where the real value is, we call our stuff life and financial planning, is on the life side. Kind of like, well, what do I do with my life? And my child-free folks, man, they'll change their goals 3-4 times in a year. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to quit my job and go start this company. No, now I'm going to move to Australia. No, I decided, and I'm like, all right, so we have to have a financial plan that's very dynamic. If you look at two parents' financial plans, they're actually very similar. The difference is the speed and number, number of kids, number of money, like how fast you're doing it, but they're very linear. Child-free folks, who knows? And it's all over the place. And even our software is built with assumptions for people that have kids. All the software has Monte Carlo assumptions. Well, that's assuming you want to not die with zero. Well, 99% success on Monte Carlo is a 99% failure to a child-free person. It's all these things you don't even think of.
Yeah, that you might not even consider if you're just following the company pension plan that you buy into, getting the same plan for everybody, the one box type thing. Yeah, your eyes wouldn't even be open up to that. I know just hearing this stuff, I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't even have thought about the alternative. And the part that my brain gets hung up on is, wow, the flexibility and the freedom to be able to shift course throughout the year. My little creative heart in me was like, oh, that would be slightly fascinating.
Be careful what you wish for. So my wife got this job offer. We packed up and went. And the hardest thing for us was we had 2 mastiffs and a cat and put them all in a Prius. You got to see these giant dogs with their nose sticking out the car. But that was it. That's fine. And what happens is you almost end up with too many choices. What happens if you're trying to figure out where to live, but it doesn't really matter? School system doesn't matter. If you're working fully remote, I can live anywhere. I got somebody for my second book, my editor for my second book, she lived in a different Airbnb each month with her dog and lived all across the country. You just can't do that with kids. I'm not judging. It's just, you can't.
Yeah, it would be difficult.
But I get on a meeting with her. I'm like, where are you today? Oh, I'm on Joshua Street. All right, cool. Well, how's Cheddar doing? As her dog, just have these conversations. And that's normal for my folks. And, what happens is within child-free people, and that's all I serve, these things are very normal. Within the, in general, financial world, it's really weird. Mm-hmm. And that's the hard part. Our focus with our child-free people is let's make your finances simple so your life can be amazing. I don't know what that means. Like buying a house for a child-free person, it's a choice, but not one that I usually recommend. Because if you're going to move every couple of years, why buy a house? Rent. But that changes core assumptions that we have to challenge the whole society and everything else.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And in there, you mentioned your book. You have a book and you have another book coming out. So let's talk about those.
Yes. So the first book was The Portrait of Childfree Wealth. Really, all I wanted to know was what people's lives were like being child-free. How did it impact life and finance? And that's actually where FILE comes from, and the Garden and the Rose, and a lot of concepts. My next book coming out is The Childfree Guide to Life and Money. It's more kind of like the money book. And for the FIRE community, it's kind of like if you took The Simple Path to Wealth plus Die with Zero, combine those two and put a child-free spin on it. A lot of the stuff like getting out of debt is just good for everybody. But then once you get past that, it gets interesting. We have a program we call the 8 No Baby Steps. If you've ever followed the Dave Ramsey world, that's the 7 baby steps. We've got our own version. But like one of the changes is we have No Baby Step 7, which is plan for parents. Because what happens if you're child free, you get, well, you don't have kids, so you can take care of mom. And it's like, oh, well, what does that, how does that impact my plan? Where am I going? So it changes each area. And in the book, what I do is the first half of the book is what life do you want to live? The second half is the finances, which is completely, it sounds like it's just like a mechanical, but it's a completely different way of thinking because you're planning for your life first. That's probably actually the way everybody should do it. But like the standard plan kind of has your life planned out for you.
Right. Yes. And if you, like so many members of the FIRE movement have realized that the standard plan is not the only plan, and they can go out and carve their own path, and it's way more exciting, way more fun. So yes, so many people around here are realizing that there are different paths that they can take. And where can people find your books?
The Childfree Guide for Life and Money comes out at the end of the year. It's available for pre-sale now everywhere you buy books. Okay. I always encourage people, go to your local bookstore, please. You don't have to buy everything from Amazon, but you can if you want.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm kind of fascinated by your first one there too, because I feel like there could be people listening right now that are in that crossroads trying to decide, oh, I'm early on in my journey here. FIRE or file sounds fascinating. And do I take the path of have kids, or do I take the path and choose to live child free? So would that book help them kind of open up? Like you said, it's kind of case studies on people. So do they get a taste of what that world is like?
You do. And you can download a free copy of that, childfreewealth.com/book. You have the electronic version. I will tell you, I'm not making a vote on whether or not people should have kids or not. I don't get a vote in it. They don't get a vote in my life. Just it is. I think it's just a different lens. So I had somebody in the book, she's in her mid-20s. And she's talking about, she went to church every day, every Sunday. And it was like, hey, you need to go be a good mom. You need to be a good dad. That's the preaching every Sunday they get. And somewhere in her mid-20s, she's like, oh, there's another option. There's an option not to have kids. And it was this kind of aha moment, and what you're seeing is younger generations really are thinking a lot more about this. I'm Gen X, and my generation is kind of more default choices, I think. But what ends up happening is you need to know what it's like, because people often with child-free folks say, well, what if you regret it? And I'm like, well, let's be honest. I'd rather regret not having kids than regret having kids. And the data says, and here's a stat for you, 18% of parents will, on a survey, admit they regret having kids.
Wow.
Okay. Now, I don't know if I believe the number or not, I'm not, judging that part. The best I've ever heard was 2 things. One, if you're going to have kids, you and your spouse have to both be enthusiastic yeses. Like, yes, we both want it. Otherwise, somebody, we're just going to cause I like that. And the other one I heard from a parent was, I love my kids. I hate being a parent. And I was like, oh, that's me. Like, that's, well, let's talk about it. And what we find is child-free folks have probably put more thought into not having kids than many people put into having kids. Because having kids is the default option. You just you get married and I got married and a year later, people are like, are you going to have kids? And I'm like, yeah, we've already told you we're not, but you've been married a year. It's time. Let's go. It's just these default things. Well, you have to stop and go, is that what I really want? And I'm not saying you should or shouldn't. I'm not saying one life's better or I'm just saying they're different. And pick the one that fits you.
Yeah. Fascinating. But that's so true. What works for one doesn't work for another. And I think there's something about us as human beings that we expect to get the answer from someone else. Like just in life in general, where something like that decision, as with all aspects of your life, that is a very personal choice. And if you sit with it long enough and you do your homework, you will be able to come up with your own answer.
But just keep in mind, everybody else has an opinion of what you should do with your life. Okay. Yeah. And, you need to learn their opinions don't really matter. And that's hard to say, but the FIRE folks are pretty good about that. Kind of you know what? I'm going to live mine. You're going to live yours. Yes. You can go grind it out for 20 more years. I'm done.
Yeah.
Cool. That's one option. It doesn't say it's better or worse. It's just different.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I put in the notice and threw away my pension job, right? For so many of my peers, they thought I was absolutely insane. But that was my choice and it's my life.
And through their lens, you probably were insane, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
As the child-free folks, people ask us what's kind of the best and worst thing about being child-free. And I actually did some surveys on this, and out of 300 respondents, I asked them, are you happy with your life? 94% said yes. That is insanely high, in any survey. The downside, it's all the judgment from other people. I have more people praying for my soul than I know what to do with. And I live in the deep South of the US and political world and all the other fun stuff. Down here in the South, you meet people that go, hey, where's your church home and how many kids do you have? Those are your first two questions. And I'm like, first of all, neither of those are your business. But all of a sudden you're the weirdo because you don't have kids. Well, it's a different life. Just like your peers going, hey, that's crazy to leave that job. Mm. Okay. You have to eventually go, yep, I'm good with my life. You be good with yours.
Yeah. I've read last year, I think it was the book, The 4 Agreements, and just trying to not be able to take the pressure of other people's judgment on yourself. It's a hard thing to do. But once you can kind of step in and embrace that, it helps melt away some of that external pressure. But I can imagine you guys get a lot of it.
I asked in my survey, I said, what's your experience working with financial planners, the child-free folks? The number one answer I got was, they said to the financial planner, hey, I'm child-free. The financial planner's like, well, you'll change your mind. And I'm like, that's complete disregard of everything. Wow. The kind of the number two answer was, well, we're going to plan just as if you have kids. And I'm like, hold up. That's what they're getting for answers. It's no different than if a fire folk goes to a financial planner, the financial planner thinks they're crazy too. But it's just a different pattern. Mm-hmm. And my hope is at least at some point, I speak to a lot of child-free people about their finances. I speak to financial people about child-free folks. My hope is eventually the financial folks are like, I don't know what the answer is, but let's figure it out. That's a good answer.
Right.
But just to say, I'm going to disregard you, or you'll just change your mind, or we're just going to play. That's what we're getting every day. And that's why my company's just serves child-free folks.
That, to me, the financial advisors that are giving that advice, they don't know any different. They don't have the context to be able to see those scenarios, right? So somebody like you have shifted your business that this is me. This is what I do. I can see all of the scenarios for you. That's where you shine. I'm going to give you a chance here to say where people can reach out to you, because I bet people are listening to this that are like, hey, Jay's going to get me. He is going to see things that I don't even see for myself. So where can people reach out to you?
Yeah, I'll give you that just 1 second. I'll just give you one anecdote. So we figured out, we tracked about 1/3 of our introductory meetings end up in tears. And we were like, why? So we actually asked folks, and they said it was the first time they felt heard and seen. Ooh. I'm like, in my heart, forget the financial part of what we're doing. That's it. Mm-hmm. And that's the power. So our website is childfreewealth.com. We are Childfree Wealth on all the socials except for Twitter and X, and Childfree Wealth Podcast, everywhere you get podcasts.
Okay, perfect. I will drop those in the show notes. And thank you so much for joining me on this fascinating conversation, Jay.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, wait, before you go, do you want to increase your income by $1,000 a month? If so, check out our free side hustle guide at www.fourleaflifestyle.com/money ideas. I'll pop it in the show notes for easy access.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of the Manifestation and Money podcast. If you enjoyed today's conversation and want to continue your journey to financial empowerment and creating a life you love, be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review.
Come follow us on Instagram at Manifestation and Money Podcast or at 4leaf Lifestyle for more inspiration and behind the scenes content. Remember, your life is yours to live. Your financial freedom journey is as unique as you are. So hop in the driver's seat. It's time to create the life of your dreams.